So we skipped the slide already. So I'm Kris from Data Minded, and for those non-Belgians in here, I want to start with a joke about beer in a bar. So a BI specialist, a data scientist, and a data engineer walk into a bar. What do you see? The BI specialist walks first to the bartender and he says, I want a triple Carmelite, which is a craft beer. If you don't know it yet, try it before you fly back to wherever. It's really good. I wanted to have it in the right glass at the right temperature. It has to be from the right source. Everything has to be perfect or I don't drink it. So he gets served the beer all through according to specs, but then he checks the label and it turns out that on the label it doesn't mention AB InBev yet. Well, AB InBev acquires all the beers, including triple Carmelite, so he doesn't trust the label, therefore he doesn't trust the beer. It's wrong metadata. Instead, he orders a water. So next up is the data scientist. He doesn't want one beer, he wants 15 small beers, all in the same glass, all in the same temperature, all coming from the same fridge. He goes away for an hour and he has his own infrastructure because he doesn't trust the infrastructure of the rest of the team. He has his own thing that he's been using from his PhD in physics. After an hour of experimentation, his magic algorithm tells him to order a white wine, so that's what he does. Lastly, the data engineer entered the room. He brags about big beer and the beer lake and how that streaming beer is the future of beer. And like he can handle more beer than anybody else in the room. He's the big data expert or the big beer expert. So he orders beer at the bartender. As long as it's a lot of beer, he doesn't care. Just give me a lot of beer. The only thing he doesn't check is actually beer that he's been given. Well, it turns out it's not. He gets some hard liquor and after 2 glasses, he passes out in the counter. So if you kind of follow the analogy, this is, if you work in enterprises, this is more or less what's happening in data warehouse environments right now, where it used to be the playground to the BI engineers. All of a sudden you have data scientists and big data engineers trying to get their piece of the data. And if you think about it, actually they're all there for the same reason. They're all there to get value out of the data. But it doesn't always work that way. In the best of cases, business wins and you combine strengths and it's awesome. In the worst of cases, and I've seen this, it becomes a tribal clan war and everybody fights each other and you produce nothing. So I want to talk a bit about the 5 lessons we've learned from doing projects like this. This is definitely not the truth or whatever. This is just insights I've gained over time and happy to challenge me with a beer after the talk. So, first one, it might be obvious, but learn from each other. You have this opportunity that you're not only surrounded by data engineers and not only surrounded by data scientists, talk to the other members of the team. So, if you compare all the different profiles, what's good and bad about each of them? So, what I really like about BI specialists is they're kind of neglected, they're kind of ignored these times, at least in my experience, but actually those are the ones with the most experience with data. They know a lot about data management, they've been building ETL pipelines for years. They know data cleansing, data modeling, data governance, and if you think you don't need that, all of that, then wait until you're in production and then you're going to cry if you didn't think about it. What's bad about them, what I don't like about them is that they can't seem to automate anything. They do manual testing, they do manual deployments, they don't even use version control. It's crazy, they put it on a shared drive somewhere, so they're allergic to agile development. Probably not all of them, but I have yet to meet the first BI engineer who actually knows agile development. And that's why rapid iterations in their mind is something like, we're going to put it in the budget of next year, and that's how fast we're going to be. So I think that's, by the way, Spark is changing a lot of this, and technology is having a big impact, but I think another big impact of why we see this transformation is because the current generation of data specialists, the BI engineers, they're slower and slower in delivering, and they're grinding to a halt, basically. Then you meet the data scientist. He or she is probably the smartest person in the room. They typically work very close to business and they're only focused on delivering value. I love these people. They can do in 2 weeks what some other people do in 2 years. What I don't like about them is that they really insist on their own tool set. Even though it's deprecated, it doesn't scale, you can't put it into production, it's still MATLAB is the most awesome tool because they've learned it in their PhD. It's frustrating sometimes to get them to switch to modern programming environments. Their coding skills is lacking, and actually they're proud about it. Yeah, we're not a coder. Yeah, then go away. And they can be lone wolves. Not everyone. I don't want to generalize, but they can be. I'm smarter than all of you, and they're right. So just leave me be in my corner. The data engineer then. they all love agile development. They're the hipsters talking about it all the time. They want to automate everything, and they have a lot of technology knowledge, and I think that's good. What I don't like about them, and I'm one of them, is that they don't have a lot of experience with data generally. They come from this Java world or Ruby or whatnot, but they have the least experience with data of the three profiles, but they have the strongest opinion on data. So that's kind of annoying, because they all claim to know it better than the ones who've actually been working with data for years. If you ask them about analytics, anything more complex than a sum is probably black magic. And the one thing you should be careful of when you talk to engineers, and people who know me know I'm like very strong in this, like, don't make stuff generic. If an engineer comes to you and says, I want to make something generic, there's actually code for saying, I want to make something complex and I want to push the release date out by another 6 months. So push back if he wants to make something generic, and it never works. The second tip is, this again is an obvious one, but so many people do it, don't come in with a solution. Every situation is different, every client is different, every problem is different, yet so many times you see people coming in and saying Spark is the solution. Spark is never the solution. Spark is a tool, might get you to a solution, might not get you to a solution. And then sometimes you see people scaling to billions of rows, and they need massive amounts of clusters, while in the end they're actually transporting like 20 kilograms of data or something. And it happens. It's a pure waste. Don't come in with the idea that Spark is going to help you. Next, I stole this from the guys from Real Impact Analytics who are here, so they're going to probably kick my ass. Anyway, you know nothing until you've deployed an end-to-end pipeline into production, and I absolutely believe that. On the picture, you see two kids selling lemonade at a lemonade stand, and for sure they're not going to compete with Coca-Cola just yet, but actually have their entire pipeline there. They're selling, they're interacting with customers, they're iterating based on customer feedback, and they're not dreaming up some requirements in the back room. So many times that I've been in so many meetings where we did whiteboarding session about what the customer wanted, and then a year later we ship, and that's completely not what the customer wanted. And I've seen that more than once with more than one different company. I actually think this is so important that we, with Data Minded, we updated our values, and this is one of our values now. You first go to production and then you iterate, not the other way around. Number 4 is that, of course, you can't run a big telco on the principles of a lemonade stand. So at some point you have to scale your organization, and it's a lot harder than it shows in this slide. I actually can kind of relate with what IBM guys were saying in the beginning, is that the IT guys don't trust the data science guys to actually put something in production. Well, the data science guys don't trust the IT guys to do anything, basically. But it's really at a standstill where everybody is working against each other. I also see some of the positive use cases where people start with what they call a data industrialization squad. Those are the ITers who have to bring consistent data to all the data leverage squads. And the data leverage squads, it's a fancy name, but those are the guys who actually, and girls who actually run the models, who train the models, who score the models. And it's not super easy in practice. And the picture you see is a brasserie, which is a brewery with a restaurant and a bar attached. If you order a beer, you don't see the bartender going into the factory, selecting some hops and making a beer. There's completely different teams who do that. I think this is one of the, I agree with what IBM guys have been saying, I think this is one of the harder nuts we have to crack these days. Finally, it's focus. Those who know me know that I have a love-hate relationship with managers, especially if they start calling engineers their resources. I absolutely hate that. It's like, nothing drains my motivation faster than that. Like, what do you do in life? Yeah, I'm that guy's resource. Like, oh, I hate that. And the tip I always give to engineers is that if managers call you a resource, you should call them overhead. Or better yet, you should call them waste. And as fate may have it, I had a few managerial roles to play in the last couple of months, so I had to talk about code, I had to sit in meetings about code, I had to do everything except coding, so I was general waste basically. But I did learn a few valuable lessons, and there's one thing that a manager should do is make sure that your team focuses. So if you have these managers that brag that their team did 80-hour work weeks, or did an all-nighter to ship a product, well, actually, don't brag about it. You failed as a manager. 90% of all the business requests that come in is utter bullshit and will never give you business value. So it's up to you to select the 10% that actually does. and make sure the team focus on that 10%. It's super critical. And stop bragging about the long work hours. So that's my pitch. This is my favorite beer, it's Hopus. Kris from Data Minded, so yeah, let's grab a beer.